As President Trump declared yesterday, he is always ready to impose tariffs across Canada starting tomorrow. Perhaps we're all looking to protect our future, maybe to find a well-paying job, to buy food without blowing our budget, and to live the American dream. But what if I told you there's a hidden threat silently infiltrating our lives? Welcome to the Economic Face-Off, where major trade disputes and political dissensions can seriously affect your money. From increasing prices of imported goods to the destruction of supply chains that can paralyze entire cities, we show you the risks most people don't notice. Stay with us until the end because the last piece of this puzzle will surprise you. Consider this your guide to avoiding financial problems before they occur. If you miss it, you could find yourself at the center of an economic hurricane. Ready to see how it all connects? Let's dive into the details. What happened on this seemingly quiet day? Canada announced significant changes in its trade policy. The government declared a new tariff plan, adding a 25% surcharge on certain products from the United States. A 10% levy was also applied to energy products. These two countries have experienced many years of friendly trade and hassle-free movement of goods. News agencies reported this sudden change with astonishment. Trump isn't joking when he says he wants to annex Canada. These words come from the Prime Minister himself. Television broadcasts filled with experts discussing what might happen next. Ordinary families also wondered how this decision would affect their budget and daily life. Some feared prices would increase in supermarkets, while others felt proud that Canada was standing firm. Social media users expressed strong opinions. A few hours later, the atmosphere shifted from calm anticipation as everyone awaited official statements. Many officials thought Canada would never go so far with such high tariffs, but Canada's reaction showed it was ready to defend its industries and workers. It was an unthinkable move for a country that often relied on quiet diplomacy. By announcing these tariffs, Canada sent a clear message that it would not back down in the face of threats or contempt. With this single declaration, the entire North American trade landscape changed. Is this really a surprise? For decades, relations between Canada and the United States have been marked by mutual respect. They have open borders, cultural ties, and major trade agreements. One of these agreements was the North American Free Trade Agreement, later updated as the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement. These agreements were supposed to make trade easier. Many in the United States thought Canada would always cooperate and never make waves, even if differences existed behind closed doors. However, Canada began to feel dissatisfied with certain politicians in Washington. Statements and changes seemed to ignore Canada's interests, raising concern in Ottawa about the country's economic stability. Public opinion also began to change. Local businessmen and workers called on the government to defend Canadian jobs, especially when they saw measures in the United States that supported American industry at Canada's expense. Although courtesy had always been the norm, growing pressure prompted Canada to reconsider its usual approach. When Canada finally announced its tariffs, many American leaders were shocked. They were accustomed to easy negotiations or quick concessions. They couldn't imagine significant resistance coming from their northern neighbor. This illusion disappeared as soon as Canadian officials declared that enough was enough. By standing firm, Canada defied the usual balance of power. This unexpected turn showed how any partner, if pushed too far, can take drastic measures to defend its interests. This reaction was a new step for both countries. Politicians in confusion. In Washington, the mood quickly changed as soon as the news became known. Lawmakers rushed into meetings to understand whether they should condemn Canada's action or try to calm the situation. Some politicians accused Canada of overreacting. Others blamed the White House for mismanaging trade relations. Behind the scenes, assistants prepared notes and responses to potential larger conflicts that could harm both economies. If you're finding value in our analysis of these economic tensions, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our latest insights on global economic events that directly impact your finances. Television briefings showed spokespersons struggling with direct questions. Many journalists asked why the administration hadn't anticipated such a development. One representative argued that these tariffs were just a small obstacle. Another warned that this was not a simple misunderstanding. The public followed closely, looking for certainty, but few found clear answers as different voices competed for attention. An atmosphere of nervousness pervaded. Soon rumors circulated regarding emergency negotiations to avoid a more serious conflict. Private sector leaders also urged Washington to take steps to ease the situation. Some insisted that the United States and Canada should immediately meet to re-examine trade conditions, while others wanted to increase pressure to show strength. This divide in American politics revealed two approaches: negotiation or escalation. Meanwhile, citizens worried about rising prices of household goods and possible disruptions in their daily lives. In this unstable environment, every statement and political move became even more important. Uncertainty had become the new norm on Capitol Hill. Canada mobilizes its forces. North of the border, the atmosphere was completely different. Rather than yielding to economic pressure, Canadian leaders united citizens around a common cause. The Prime Minister made a firm and calm statement, reminding everyone that these tariffs were not intended to harm neighbors but to protect Canadian jobs. Local radio stations broadcast these remarks repeatedly throughout the day, and newspapers praised the government's determination. In homes across the country, families discussed how they could buy more local products to support their fellow citizens. Community leaders launched small campaigns calling on people to buy Canadian products in stores and online. Farmers encouraged people to choose local produce, while small factories printed labels urging people to buy Canadian brands. Concern about rising prices of imported goods remained, but many believed this unified approach would reduce the consequences. Even children began learning to support national products, with teachers explaining how each local choice could lead to positive changes. Despite long-term concerns, a clear sense of pride prevailed. People saw this moment as an opportunity for Canada to stand up for itself, even in the face of greater forces. By relying on mutual support, citizens and officials hoped to find a fair solution. Would the situation be resolved quickly or would it transform into a deeper conflict? That remained uncertain. However, the country's voice was clear: unity in the face of trade war. Pressure points. Canada decided to respond to tariffs directly but cautiously, focusing on certain U.S. products that could have the greatest impact on the most sensitive sectors. Rather than applying additional taxes on a wide range of products, Canada targeted those with political and economic significance. Kentucky bourbon is a perfect example. This iconic drink is tied to a region where influential legislators live, so any increase in bourbon prices attracts their attention and exerts real pressure. Florida orange juice is another target because it comes from a state that often matters in elections, and the increasing price of orange juice becomes an important issue for politicians and families. The boldest measure could be targeting Tesla, which is considered a leader in modern technology and eco-friendly transportation. Tesla depends on materials such as nickel, lithium, and aluminum that Canada can supply or restrict. By increasing the cost of these resources, Canada sends a strong message that the United States cannot count on stable trade without taking this factor into account. Supporters of electric cars need cheaper and more reliable materials, but each new tax makes these cars more expensive and more difficult to produce. With this plan, Canada is not playing at random. Each tariff is directed toward a point that will trigger a reaction. When costs increase for bourbon, orange juice, and key materials for electric vehicles, Washington might realize these measures have serious consequences for everyday people. The supply chain in the automotive industry, Modern cars are not assembled in one place. Instead, parts cross the border several times before a car is ready to be sold. The steel frame may start in Canada, then cross the border to have American parts added, then return to Canada for more components, and so on. This intricate dance of parts creates thousands of jobs on both sides of the border. When tariffs appear, this smooth movement of parts becomes more complex and expensive. Factories might need to wait longer for necessary parts, causing production delays. Workers might find themselves temporarily without work if assembly lines slow down. A seemingly small trade dispute can quickly turn into a major economic problem affecting both countries. The consumer pain. While politicians and business leaders debate, ordinary citizens start to feel the effects of these trade disputes. A family in Minnesota notices that their favorite Canadian maple syrup has become more expensive. A construction worker in Toronto finds that tools made in the United States now cost more, making it harder to replace worn equipment. A small business owner who sells goods on both sides of the border watches their profit margins shrink as new paperwork and tariffs eat into their revenue. These individual struggles might seem minor compared to headline-grabbing trade figures, but they represent real economic pain for millions of people. The longer trade disputes continue, the more these effects compound. Initial price increases might be absorbed or ignored, but over time, they force difficult choices. Families cut back on certain purchases, businesses lay off workers, and economic growth slows on both sides of the border. This ripple effect transforms a political disagreement into an economic reality that affects everyone. Seeking alternatives. As tariffs continue, people and businesses begin looking for alternatives. A Canadian manufacturer who used to buy parts from Michigan now sources them from Ontario, even if they cost slightly more. An American food processor switches from Canadian wheat to domestically grown varieties. These changes might solve immediate problems, but they often come with hidden costs. Less variety, higher prices, or lower quality. Some businesses even consider relocating their operations to avoid crossing borders entirely. A factory that once straddled the border might consolidate in one country, leading to job losses in the other. What began as a temporary reaction to tariffs becomes a permanent restructuring of the economic landscape. Historical perspective. This isn't the first time these neighbors have faced trade disputes. Throughout history, there have been moments of tension interspersed with long periods of cooperation. The difference today lies in the interconnected nature of the modern economy. Previous disputes affected specific industries but could be contained. Today's global supply chains mean that disruptions spread quickly across sectors and borders. Looking back at past trade conflicts provides some reassurance. They eventually end. Sometimes through negotiation, sometimes through legal challenges, but markets ultimately find equilibrium. The question is how much economic damage occurs before that point is reached. Negotiation prospects. Behind closed doors, diplomats from both countries are already seeking solutions. Trade representatives meet in neutral settings, searching for compromises that will allow both sides to claim victory while minimizing economic harm. These discussions remain fragile, with each side weighing political considerations against economic realities. Public statements remain firm and unyielding, even as private conversations explore possible paths forward. Experienced negotiators know that the first round of tariffs often serves more as a signal than a final position. The art of these negotiations involves finding creative solutions that address underlying concerns while providing political cover for leaders to step back from confrontational positions. Sometimes the resolution comes in unexpected forms. Increased cooperation in other areas, joint investment in border infrastructure, or new agreements on specific sectors that weren't initially part of the dispute. The path ahead. As businesses adapt and negotiations continue, the economic relationship between these neighbors will evolve. The deep ties of friendship, shared values, and mutual economic interests provide a strong foundation for eventually resolving differences. Yet the road to resolution may not be straight or easy. Every economic dispute contains lessons about interdependence and resilience. For ordinary citizens watching these events unfold, the key takeaway is the importance of economic literacy and preparedness. Understanding how global trade affects local economies helps people make more informed decisions about their finances, careers, and investments. While the specific details of this dispute will eventually fade into history, the underlying dynamics of international trade and economic interdependence will continue to shape our world for generations to come. In the meantime, communities on both sides of the border demonstrate remarkable resilience, finding ways to maintain connections and cooperation even as national policies create new barriers.